Jake Miller sat in the passenger seat of the alien shuttle and watched the city below grow larger. The buildings looked like twisted glass towers that reached up into the purple sky. Everything was so different from Earth. The air smelled like flowers he had never seen before. The gravity felt lighter under his feet. "Remember, Jake," said Ambassador Linda Carter from beside him, "these people care a lot about respect and honor. Don't touch anything without asking first. Don't speak unless someone talks to you. And whatever you do, don't argue with them." Jake nodded. He was 28 years old and had been a captain in Earth's Space Navy for 6 years. This was his first time as a diplomat. The Zephyrians had agreed to meet with humans about mining rights on some empty planets. Earth needed the metals to build more spaceships. The Zephyrians had the legal claim to those worlds. The shuttle landed on a platform made of smooth white stone. 2 tall aliens waited for them. They had blue-gray skin and long faces. Their eyes were larger than human eyes and completely black. They wore long robes that seemed to change color in the light. "Welcome to Zephyr Prime," said the first alien. His voice sounded like wind through metal pipes. "I am Counselor Dalvin. This is Guard Captain Yextol. Prince Kethver of House Vethus has invited you to dine at his palace tonight." Linda smiled and bowed slightly. "We are honored by the invitation." Jake cocked her bow. The aliens looked at him for a long moment, then turned and walked toward a floating vehicle. Jake had heard that Zephyrians thought humans were primitive. They had faster ships, better weapons, and more advanced technology. Some of them called humans dirt crawlers because Earth was mostly covered in soil and water instead of the crystal. Cities that Zephyrians preferred. The palace was huge. It sat on top of a mountain and was made of the same white stone as the landing platform. Tall towers spiraled up into the clouds. Gardens full of strange plants covered the lower levels. Everything glowed with soft blue light. Inside, the walls were covered with pictures that moved like videos. They showed Zephyrian warriors fighting in space battles and noble families standing in formal poses. Jake tried not to stare, but it was hard. The technology was amazing. "The dining hall is this way," said Dalvin. He led them through corridors lined with more moving pictures. Jake saw some that showed humans, but they were always shown as smaller and weaker than the Zephyrians in the images. The dining hall was enormous. A long table sat in the center, made from what looked like a single piece of green crystal. 40 or 50 Zephyrians already sat around it. They all wore fancy robes and jewelry that sparkled with their own light. At the head of the table sat a young Zephyrian with a golden crown. This had to be Prince Kethver. "Humans," said the prince, without standing up. "How interesting. I have heard so much about your species." His voice carried across the room easily. "Please, sit at the far end of the table. I hope you can manage our food." Jake felt his face get hot. The prince was being rude on purpose. Linda put a hand on his arm and smiled at the other aliens as they walked to the seats the prince had pointed to. The seats were at the very end of the table, far from the important guests. The dinner began with foods that Jake didn't recognize. Some of it tasted good, but some of it was bitter or too sweet. The Zephyrians talked among themselves and mostly ignored the humans. Jake heard them talking about humans several times, but not in a nice way. "I heard they still use metal weapons," said one alien lady. "Their ships barely work in deep space," said another. "They fight wars with each other over dirt and water," laughed a third. Jake tried to ignore them, but it was getting harder. Linda kept giving him warning looks. Then Prince Kethver stood up. "Let us toast to our new friendship," he said loudly. He picked up a tall glass filled with purple liquid. Everyone else did the same. "To the mighty humans, who have finally learned to leave their little mud ball of a planet." All the Zephyrians laughed. Jake's hands turned into fists under the table. Linda kicked his leg gently. The prince walked down the table toward them, still holding his glass. "Tell me, Captain Miller, is it true that humans eat the flesh of dead?" "Animals? Yes," Jake said quietly. "How primitive." The prince pretended to stumble and spilled his purple wine all over Jake's uniform. The liquid was cold and sticky. "Oh, how clumsy of me. But I suppose it doesn't matter. Your clothes already looked cheap." Jake stood up fast. His chair fell backward with a loud crash. The whole room went quiet. "That was on purpose," he said. "Are you calling me a liar?" asked the prince. His black eyes got narrow. "Yeah, I am." Jake was tired of being treated like garbage. "You spilled that wine on me because you think humans are beneath you. Well, maybe we are primitive, but at least we have manners." The prince smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "How dare you insult me in my own house?" He pulled out a long, curved knife from his belt. The blade glowed with blue. "Energy. This is Kalthoris, the honor blade of my family. No one has ever touched it, except members of House Vethys." Jake was angry and not thinking clearly. So what? He reached out and put his hand on the blade. The room exploded with gasps and shouts. Every Zephyrian in the hall stood up at once. Some of them looked scared. Others looked excited. "Prince." Kethver stared at Jake's hand on his knife, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. An old Zephyrian with white markings on his face hurried over to them. "By the ancient laws," he whispered, "the human has invoked the right of sovereign challenge." "What does that mean?" asked Linda. She looked scared. The old alien looked very serious. "It means Captain Miller has challenged Prince Kethvar to single combat. If the prince wins, Captain Miller dies. If Captain Miller wins ... double quotes. He paused and looked around the room. "Prince Kethvar and all of House Vethys must serve him until death." Jake let go of the knife and stepped back. "Wait, what? I didn't challenge anyone to anything. The law is clear," said the old alien. "You touched the honor blade of House Vethys while accusing the prince of dishonor. This is a challenge that cannot be taken back. The duel must happen." Prince Kethver looked angry, but also excited. "Good. I have wanted to show these humans their place for a long time. When do we fight, Elder Yulthrin?" "Tomorrow at sunset," said the elder, "in the Crimson Arena, as tradition demands. The duel will be broadcast across the Empire, so all may witness." Jake felt sick. He had just gotten himself into a fight to the death with an alien prince who was stronger, faster, and better trained than him. And if he lost, he would die on live television for the whole galaxy to see. Linda grabbed his arm. "There has to be a way out of this," she said to Elder Yulthran. "Some diplomatic solution." The elder shook his head sadly. "The right of sovereign challenge is older than our civilization. It cannot be broken or changed. Captain Miller must fight, or he must die as a coward. There is no other choice." Jake looked around the room. Every alien was staring at him. Some looked curious. Others looked like they were already planning his funeral. Prince Kethver was smiling like he had already won. "Fine," Jake said. "I'll fight." He didn't know how he was going to win, but he wasn't going to die as a coward. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to survive until tomorrow night. Jake spent the night in a guest room at the palace. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Prince Kethver's knife cutting through his chest. Linda had tried to contact Earth for help, but the message would take 3 days to get there. By then, Jake would be dead in the morning. Elder Yulthran visited him. The old alien brought a simple breakfast and sat down across from Jake at a small table. "You seem calm for someone about to die," said the elder. "I'm not dead. Yet," Jake replied. He was eating something that tasted like eggs, but was bright green. Tell me about this duel. What are the rules? Yul Thren looked surprised. You still plan to fight? Most beings would beg for mercy by now. I'm not most beings. Jake finished his breakfast and looked at the elder. The rules? Very well. Yul Thren leaned back in his chair. Each fighter may use any weapon they choose. The fight continues until one fighter yields or dies. There are no other rules. What weapons will the prince use? Kethvar is a master of the plasma sword and energy shield. He also carries a pulse rifle for long-range attacks. He has trained since childhood in the noble combat arts. The elder paused. What weapons do you have, human? Jake thought about his equipment. He had a basic kinetic rifle that shot metal bullets. He had a combat knife and some small explosive charges. Compared to alien energy weapons, his gear was primitive. But maybe that was good. Maybe the prince wouldn't expect primitive weapons. I'll figure something out, Jake said. The Crimson Arena was in the center of the city. It was an ancient building made of red stone that rose up like a mountain. Thousands of Zephyrians filled the seats. Giant screens showed the arena floor. To the crowds outside, Linda told Jake that billions of aliens across the galaxy were watching. This is insane, she said as they walked through the tunnels under the arena. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. There is no other way, Jake said. He was wearing his combat armor and carrying his weapons. The armor was thick but flexible. It could stop some damage, but not much. If I run, every human will be seen as a coward. Our people will never get respect from any alien species. They reached the entrance to the arena floor. Jake could hear the crowd cheering above them. Elder Yul Thren was waiting with several other important-looking Zephyrians. The prince is already on the field, said the elder. Are you ready, Captain Miller? Jake checked his rifle one more time. As ready as I'll ever be. The arena floor was huge and circular. The ground was covered with red sand, ancient stone. Pillars and broken walls were scattered around the space. These were left over from duels hundreds of years ago. The crowd noise was deafening. Prince Kethvar stood in the center of the arena. He wore shining armor that seemed to be made of liquid metal. His plasma sword glowed with bright blue fire. His energy shield created a shimmering wall of light around his left arm. He looked like a warrior god. Jake walked out from the tunnel. The crowd got louder. Most of them were booing and shouting insults. He heard them calling him dirt crawler and primitive ape. He tried to ignore them and focus on the prince. Begin, shouted Elder Yul Thren from a raised platform. Prince Kethvar moved faster than Jake expected. The alien prince ran across the sand like he was flying. His plasma sword cut through the air with a humming sound. Jake barely had time to roll behind a stone pillar before the blade burned through the space where his head had been. Jake raised his rifle and fired 3 quick shots. The metal bullets hit the prince's energy shield and bounced off harmlessly. The shield flashed with each impact, but didn't break. The prince laughed. Is that the best human technology can do? He swung his sword at the pillar. The stone exploded in a shower of sparks and chunks. Jake rolled away just in time. For the next 10 minutes, Jake ran and hid while the prince destroyed everything in the arena. The alien was stronger and faster than any human could be. His weapons cut through stone like it was paper. His shield stopped every bullet Jake fired. Jake's armor was cracked and smoking from near misses. His rifle was almost out of ammunition. The crowd was laughing and cheering for the prince. This was going exactly like everyone expected, but Jake was learning. He watched how the prince moved. The alien fought like he was dancing. Every move was perfect and beautiful. It was the fighting style of someone who had been taught by masters and had never lost a real battle. That was the problem. The prince had never fought someone who didn't follow the rules. Jake waited behind a broken wall until the prince came close. Instead of running again, he threw a handful of sand into the alien's face. The prince stepped back and blinked, trying to clear his vision. In that moment, Jake tackled him around the waist. They went down hard. The prince's sword went flying across the sand. His shield flickered and went out. For a few seconds, they rolled around on the ground like children fighting in a schoolyard. The crowd went quiet. This wasn't how noble duels were supposed to look. The prince was stronger, but Jake had grown up with 4 older brothers. He knew how to fight dirty. He bit the prince's arm. He jabbed his fingers into pressure points. He fought like a human. From Earth instead of like a noble alien warrior. Prince Kethver threw Jake off and scrambled for his sword. Jake pulled out his combat knife and threw it as hard as he could. The blade stuck in the prince's shoulder. The alien screamed and fell backward. "You fight without honor," the prince shouted. Blood was running down his arm. "I fight to win," Jake said. He had lost his rifle somewhere in the fight. All he had left were 2 small explosive charges. On Earth, we call it survival. The prince pulled the knife out of his shoulder and threw it away. He picked up his sword with his good arm. The blade was smaller now, flickering like a candle in the wind. His shield was completely dead. "I will still kill you, human. My bloodline goes back 1,000 years. I will not be defeated by a primitive animal." Jake smiled. "That's your problem. You think I'm an animal. But animals are dangerous when they're cornered." He pulled the pins on both explosive charges and threw them at the prince's feet. The alien tried to run, but the charges went off before he could get clear. The explosion knocked both fighters down and filled the air with smoke and dust. When the smoke cleared, Jake was lying on his back, bleeding from several cuts. His armor was cracked and broken, but he was alive. Prince Kethvar was lying 10 feet away. His armor was melted and torn. His sword was broken in half. He was breathing, but barely. His eyes were closed. Jake got to his feet slowly. Everything hurt. He walked over to the prince and stood above him. The arena was completely silent. Nobody was cheering now. "Do you yield?" Jake asked. The prince opened his eyes. For a moment, he looked confused. Then he saw Jake standing over him with a piece of broken metal in his hand. The prince could have kept fighting, but he would have died if he did. The prince coughed up blood. "I yield," the crowd exploded. Half of them were screaming in anger. The other half were screaming in shock. Jake looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. He had done something that nobody thought was possible. He had beaten a Zephyrian prince in single combat. Elder Yulthron's voice boomed across the arena. "By the ancient laws, Captain Jake Miller of Earth is declared the victor. Prince Kethver of House Vethys has yielded in honorable combat." Jake dropped the piece of metal and sat down hard on the sand. He was exhausted and hurt, but he was alive. More importantly, he had won. Somehow, against all odds, he had actually won. The crowd was still screaming. Some aliens were throwing things into the arena. Others were cheering. Most just looked shocked. A human had beaten one of their greatest warriors. Linda ran onto the field with a medical team. "Jake, are you okay?" "I'm alive," he said. "But I don't think I can feel my legs." "You did it," she said, helping him stand up. "I can't believe it, but you actually did it." Jake looked across the arena at Prince Kethver. The alien prince was being carried away on a stretcher, but his eyes were still open. He was looking at Jake with an expression that was part anger, part confusion, and part something that might have been respect. "Yeah," Jake said, "I did it. Now what happens? Elder Yulthrin approached them with several other officials. The old alien looked very serious. Now, Captain Miller, you must learn what it means to own a noble house of the Zephyrian Empire. Prince Kethver, his family, and all their servants are bound to you by blood and honor. They must obey your commands until the day you die. Jake stared at him. Wait, what? I don't want to own anybody. What you want does not matter, said the elder. The law is older than our civilization. House Vithis belongs to you now. That includes 312 individuals, 17 starships, mining rights to 47 planets, and enough wealth to buy a solar system. Jake looked around the arena one more time. The crowd was still going crazy. News cameras were floating above the field, broadcasting his victory to the entire galaxy. He had come here as a simple diplomat trying to negotiate mining rights. Now he owned one of the most powerful families in the Zephyrian Empire. This is going to be complicated, he said. 3 days later, Jake sat in a hospital bed on Zephyr Prime, staring at a datapad that showed his new property. The list went on for pages. Starships, planets, mining facilities, factories, bank accounts, and 312 people, who now belonged to him, according to ancient alien law. Dr. Ben Torres, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, had arrived that morning on the fastest ship the human government could send. He sat beside Jake's bed with a worried expression. This is unprecedented, Ben said, scrolling through the legal documents. No human has ever owned alien citizens before. Earth Command doesn't know how to handle this situation. I don't want to own anyone, Jake said for the 100th time since winning the duel. Can't I just free them? That's what we thought too, said Linda from across the room. She had been working with Zephyrian lawyers for 3 days straight, but it's not that simple. Elder Yulthron explained it to me yesterday. The door opened, and the elder himself walked in, followed by a young Zephyrian female. She was tall and elegant, with silver markings on her blue-gray skin. She wore a simple white robe instead of the fancy clothes Jake had seen other nobles wearing. Captain Miller, said Elder Yulthron, I am pleased to see you are recovering well. May I present Princess Zaylalin of House Vithis. She is Prince Kethvor's sister, and is now your ... property. Jake felt sick hearing that word. I don't want any property. Can't you just pretend this whole thing never happened? Princess Zaylalin spoke for the first time. Her voice was softer than her brother's, but still had that musical quality all Zephyrians seem to have. Captain Miller, may I explain something to you? Go ahead. In your culture, slavery is evil, because beings are forced to serve against their will. But our oath-binding is different. We cannot exist without it. It is built into our minds and our souls. She sat down in a chair near his bed. If you release us from the oath, we will die. That's crazy, Jake said. People can't just die because they don't have a master. Elder Yulthrin nodded sadly. I know it sounds impossible to human minds, but Zephyrians evolved differently than humans. Our species survived by forming perfect loyalty bonds within family groups. Over millions of years, this became part of our biology. A Zephyrian without an oath bond experiences physical and mental pain. It grows worse each day until death comes. Ben leaned forward. Are you saying their brains are wired differently than ours? Exactly. Princess Zaylalin's family has served noble houses for 50,000 years. Their genetic makeup requires the structure and purpose that oath-binding provides. Without it, their brain chemistry becomes toxic to their own bodies. Jake stared at the princess. So if I set you free, you'll die? Within a month, she said calmly. It would be a slow and painful death. The same fate would befall my brother, my parents, and all 312 members of our house. But that's... Jake struggled to find words. That's horrible. It is our nature, said Princess Zalin. Just as humans require oxygen to breathe, we require oath bonds to live. You did not choose this burden, Captain Miller, but now you carry it. We depend on you for our lives. Jake put his head in his hands. This was supposed to be a simple diplomatic mission. Now he was responsible for the lives of hundreds of alien beings he had never met. What exactly does this oath require? Asked Ben. Elder Yulthran pulled out another datapad. House Vethys must protect Captain Miller's life above their own. They must obey his commands unless those commands would cause him harm. They cannot lie to him, steal from him, or betray him. In return, Captain Miller must provide them with purpose and direction. What if Jake gives them bad orders? Asked Linda. They must obey, even if the orders lead to their deaths. The only exception is if the order would harm Captain Miller himself. The oath prevents them from allowing their master to be hurt, even by his own commands. Jake looked at Princess Zalin. What was your life like before the duel? I managed the educational facilities on 17 worlds. I oversaw the teaching of 2 million Zephyrian children. I also served as a cultural advisor to the Empire's Council on interspecies relations. She paused. My brother and I both held important positions. We were not servants in the way humans understand the term. And now we serve you. Our positions, our wealth, our authority, all of it belongs to you. We cannot make any decisions without your permission. We cannot leave your presence without your command. We cannot even sleep without your approval. The weight of responsibility hit Jake like a physical blow. These weren't just servants or slaves. They were highly intelligent, accomplished beings who had been reduced to complete dependence on him because of an ancient law and a fight he never meant to start. There has to be a loophole, Jake said. Some way around this. Elder Yulthrin shook his head. The law has stood for 50,000 years. Many have tried to find exceptions or alternatives. None have succeeded. The oath bond is absolute. Doctor. Torres had been taking notes on his own datapad. Captain Miller, I need to ask Princess Zalin some questions about the psychological effects of the bond. Go ahead, Jake said. Ben turned to the princess. Do you resent Captain Miller for winning the duel? Resentment is difficult to feel toward one's oath holder. The bond creates strong protective and loyalty impulses. I am angry that my brother was foolish enough to allow the challenge to happen, but I cannot feel true anger toward Captain Miller. What about your family's wealth and property? How do you feel about losing control of it? We have not lost it. We simply hold it in trust for our master now. If Captain Miller were to die without naming an heir, everything would return to us. She looked at Jake. We hope that does not happen soon. Jake got out of bed, despite the protests from the medical staff. His body was mostly healed thanks to Zephyrian medical technology. I need to see the rest of him. The whole house. I can't make decisions about people I've never met. That can be arranged, said Elder Yulthrin. But first, there is something else you must know. Other noble houses are not pleased with this situation. What do you mean? Princess Zalin answered. House Vethys was very powerful before the duel. We had enemies who wanted to see us fall. Now that a human controls us, they see opportunity. Opportunity for what? To destroy us completely. If you die, we all die with you according to the oath. Some houses are already planning your assassination. Jake felt cold despite the warm air in the room. They want to kill me to get rid of you? Yes, and there are others who want to capture you and force you to give them commands that would weaken our house. The oath compels us to obey any order you give, even if it destroys. Linda stood up quickly. We need to get Jake off this planet. Take him back to Earth, where he'll be safe. That won't work, said Elder Yulthrin. The oath requires House Vethys to remain close to their master. If Captain Miller travels to Earth, all 312 House members must come with him. That would cause a diplomatic crisis. And if they stay here without me? Asked Jake. They will begin to die within days. The oath bond requires physical proximity to function properly. Jake sat back down on the bed. Every solution led to more problems. He was trapped on an alien world, responsible for hundreds of lives, and surrounded by enemies who wanted him dead. Okay, he said finally. Let's start with the basics. I want to meet every member of House Vethys. I want to understand what they did before the duel, and what they need from me now. If I'm stuck with this responsibility, I'm going to do it right. Princess Zaylin smiled for the first time since entering the room. That is wise, my lord. Most oath holders simply give orders without understanding their servants' abilities. Don't call me my lord, Jake said. My name is Jake. I cannot. The oath requires formal address to show proper respect. Then call me Captain Miller. My lord makes me feel like I'm playing dress-up. As you command, Captain Miller. Elder. Yulthrin gathered his robes. I will arrange for you to meet with the house leaders tomorrow. But be warned, the galaxy is watching everything you do. Your decisions will affect not just House Vethys, but the relationship between humans and all alien species. After the elder left, Jake sat in silence for several minutes. Princess Zaylin remained in her chair, waiting patiently. Can I ask you something? Jake said. Of course, Captain Miller. Are you afraid of me? She considered the question carefully. I am afraid of what might happen to my people if you make poor decisions. But I am not afraid of you personally. The oath tells me that you are trustworthy and honorable. I cannot feel fear towards someone the bond identifies as worthy of loyalty. That sounds like brainwashing. Perhaps it is, in a way. But it is also survival. My species could not have built a galactic empire without the absolute trust that oath bonds provide. We do not question our masters, because questioning leads to conflict, and conflict leads to death. Jake looked out the window at the alien city below. Somewhere out there, 312 beings were waiting for him to tell them how to live their lives. The responsibility was overwhelming, but maybe, if he was careful and smart, he could find a way to make this work for everyone. Maybe. He could prove that humans deserved respect in the galaxy, or maybe he would just get everyone killed. Time would tell. Jake stood in the main hall of House Vethys and looked at the 312 aliens who now belonged to him. They were arranged in neat rows according to their rank and function. Some wore the fine robes of administrators and advisors. Others wore simple work clothes. All of them watched him with the same expression of patient waiting. It had been a week since the duel. Jake had spent every day meeting with different groups from the house, trying to understand what he had inherited. The more he learned, the more complicated everything became. These are our military officers, said Princess Zaylin, gesturing to a group of 20 Zephyrians in dark uniforms. They command the house fleet and our security forces. Commander Veltar stepped forward and bowed deeply. Captain Miller, our forces are at your disposal. 17 warships, 42 support vessels, and 3,000 trained warriors await your orders. Jake felt uncomfortable with all the bowing. Thank you, Commander. But I hope we won't need to fight anyone. I fear that hope may be unrealistic. My lord, said a new voice from behind him. Jake turned to see Duke Morthek, Princess Zaylin's father, and the former head of House Vethys. The older alien looked tired and worn down by the events of the past week. His son, Prince Kethvar, had recovered from his injuries, but refused to speak to anyone, especially Jake. What do you mean? Jake asked. House Mordalith has been asking questions about your security arrangements, said the Duke. Duke Vex Tarn has also been spreading rumors that you plan to sell House Vethys assets to Earth corporations. Princess Zaylin translated for Jake. Duke Vextarn leads our strongest. Rival house. He has wanted to destroy us for decades. Now that a human controls our fate, he sees an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? If you die, we all die with you. He could simply arrange your assassination and claim that he was protecting the Empire from human influence. Jake rubbed his forehead. Politics on Earth were complicated enough. Alien politics seemed designed to give him headaches. What about the other houses? Are they all against us? Not all, said Duke Norfolk. House Zaldin has offered their support. Duke Nelver believes that your victory proves humans deserve respect, but most of the Noble Council sees you as a threat to their way of life. Dr. Ben Torres, who had been taking notes throughout the meeting, looked up from his datapad. Jake, I've been analyzing the political situation. You're not just dealing with one house anymore. Your actions affect the balance of power in the entire Zephyrian Empire. Great, Jake muttered. No pressure at all. A younger Zephyrian in messenger robes hurried into the hall and approached Princess Zaylin. He whispered something in her ear that made her face go pale. What is it? Jake asked. A message from the Imperial Palace. Emperor Zarthis has summoned you to appear before him tomorrow. All members of House Vethys must accompany you. The room fell silent. Even Jake could tell this was serious news. Is that good or bad? He asked. The Emperor has not spoken publicly since the duel, said Duke Norfolk. His opinion could determine whether other houses accept your authority or unite against you. That night, Jake sat in his quarters, trying to prepare for the most important meeting of his life. Linda had returned to Earth to brief the government on the situation. Dr. Torres was still with him, but even Earth's best alien expert couldn't predict what an emperor who had ruled for 3 centuries might do. Princess Zaylin knocked on his door and entered when he called out. She carried a tray of food and a set of formal robes. You need to eat, she said, setting the tray on his desk. And you should wear these tomorrow. The Emperor values proper ceremony. Jake looked at the robes. They were deep blue with silver, threads that seemed to move on their own. They're very nice, but I don't think I should dress like a Zephyrian. I'm human. I should look like one. The Emperor will respect your honesty, she agreed. But these robes mark you as the master of a noble house. Without them, some will question your authority. Jake picked up the robes and felt the strange fabric. It was smoother than silk, but somehow alive. Princess, can I ask you something personal? Of course, Captain Miller. Do you hate this? Being bound to serve someone who doesn't understand your culture? She sat down across from him. I have been thinking about that question since the duel. The truthful answer is complicated. Try me. I do not hate serving you because the oath makes hatred impossible, but I am frustrated by your ignorance of our ways. You make decisions based on human values that sometimes conflict with Zephyrian needs. Like what? Yesterday, you ordered our servants to eat at the same table as our administrators. In human culture, this shows equality and respect. In Zephyrian culture, it creates confusion and anxiety. Our servants felt uncomfortable because they were not prepared for the responsibility of advising you on important matters. Jake hadn't thought about that. He had been trying to treat everyone equally, but equality meant different things to different species. How can I learn faster? He asked. Listen more. Command less. Ask questions before making changes. She paused. And trust that we want to serve you well. The oath ensures our loyalty, but our competence comes from experience you do not yet have. The next morning, Jake wore his human uniform instead of the Zephyrian robes. He wanted the Emperor to see him as he really was, not as a pretend alien noble. The Imperial Palace was even larger than House Vethys. It covered an entire island in the middle of the capital city's main lake. Bridges made of crystal connected it to the shore. Gardens filled with impossible plants covered every surface that wasn't building. Jake rode in a flying vehicle with Princess Zaylin and her parents. Behind them came a long line of vehicles carrying the rest of House Vethys. Citizens lined the bridges to watch them pass. Some cheered, others threw things. Most just stared. "They've never seen anything like this," said Duchess Silvera, Princess Zaylin's mother. "A human commanding a noble house challenges everything they believe about the natural order." The throne room was the size of a sports stadium. The ceiling disappeared into shadows far above. Pillars carved with moving images supported balconies where hundreds of nobles watched from seats that floated in midair. Emperor Zarthes sat on a throne made from a single piece of black crystal. He was ancient, even by Zephyrian standards. His skin was almost white with age, and his eyes held the weight of centuries. When he spoke, his voice carried across the vast room without effort. "Approach, human." Jake walked forward with Princess Zaylin beside him. The rest of House Vethys followed in perfect formation. Their footsteps echoed in the huge space dot when they reached the base of the throne. Everyone except Jake knelt down. He remained standing, not sure if he should bow or not. "You do not kneel," observed the Emperor. "I'm not sure if I should, Your Majesty. I don't want to insult you, but I also don't know your customs. Honesty, interesting." The Emperor leaned forward slightly. "You have caused quite a disturbance in my empire, Captain Miller." "I didn't mean to, sir. I just touched a knife." A ripple of laughter came from the watching nobles. The Emperor's mouth might have curved slightly, but it was hard to tell. "Tell me, human, what do you plan to do with House Vethys?" Jake had prepared for this question. "I plan to learn from them, Your Majesty. They're smart and experienced. I think I can help them serve the Empire better if I understand how things work." "And you do not plan to loot their wealth and return to Earth?" "No, sir. Even if I wanted to, they would die if I left them. I won't let that happen." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. The entire throne room waited in silence. "Duke Vextarn," the Emperor called out. A tall Zephyrian in gold robes stepped forward from the crowd of nobles. Jake recognized him from descriptions. This was the leader of House Mordelef, the family that wanted to destroy House Vethys. "You have requested that I remove this human from our world," said the Emperor. "Make your case." Duke Vextarn bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, this human threatens the stability of our empire. He commands advanced technology through House Vethys that could be used against us. He has no understanding of our culture or laws. Most importantly, he has proven that our noble bloodlines can be defeated by primitive beings. And what do you propose? Declare the duel invalid. Execute the human as a spy and terrorist. Return House Vethys to proper Zephyrian control." The Emperor turned his ancient eyes to Jake. "How do you respond to these accusations?" Jake's mouth felt dry, but he forced himself to speak clearly. "Your Majesty, I'm not a spy or a terrorist. I'm just a soldier who got in over his head. As for being primitive..." He paused and looked around at all the alien faces watching him. "Maybe I am, but I beat Prince Kethvar in fair combat according to your own laws. If your laws don't mean anything when the result is inconvenient, then they're not really laws at all." The Emperor nodded slowly. "And what of Duke Vextarn's claim that you threaten our empire?" "I don't want to threaten anyone. I just want to keep House Vethys alive and maybe learn something about the galaxy while I'm doing it." Jake took a deep breath. "But if someone tries to kill me to get rid of them, I will defend myself. House Vethys has 17 warships and 3,000 warriors. I'd rather not use them, but I will if I have to." "You threaten the Emperor himself," shouted Duke Vextarn. 6 months after the duel, Jake woke up in his bed at House Vethus to the sound of alarms. Red lights flashed in his room, and Princess Zaylilin's voice came through the communication system. "Captain Miller, please come to the security center. Immediately. We have detected ships approaching the planet." Jake threw on his clothes and ran through the corridors of the house. He had learned the layout well over the past months. Guards bowed as he passed, but there was no time for formality. The security center was full of activity. Zephyrians worked at control stations that showed star maps and sensor readings. Commander Veltar looked up as Jake entered. "Captain, we have 23 ships on approach. They bear the markings of House Mordeleth." "Duke Vextarn," Jake said. He had been expecting this for weeks. "Are they in attack formation?" "Yes, sir." "They will be in weapons range in 30 minutes. Princess Zaylilin appeared beside Jake. She looked calm, but he could see tension in her eyes. "Captain Miller, Duke Vextarn has been building an alliance against us. 5 noble houses have joined him. They claim you are a threat to the Empire. What does the Emperor say?" The Emperor has remained silent. His last public statement was 6 weeks ago, when he declared that noble houses must resolve their own disputes. Jake understood. The Emperor had given him protection, but only to a point. If Duke Vextarn could destroy House Vethus in open battle, the Emperor would not interfere. "How many ships do we have?" Jake asked. 17 combat vessels," replied Commander Veltar. "But their fleet is larger and newer. In a direct battle, we would likely lose. Then we don't fight a direct battle." Jake looked at the star map, showing the approaching enemy fleet. "Princess, remember what I told you about human military history? You said humans survived by fighting smarter, not harder." "Exactly. Commander Veltar, I want our ships to retreat to the asteroid field near the 4th planet. Make it look like we're running away in panic." "Captain, that would be seen as cowardice," the commander protested. "Let them think we're cowards. It will make them careless." Jake pointed to the display. "How well do you know that asteroid field?" "Very well. House Vethus has mining operations there." "Good. We're going to use their arrogance against them." 3 hours later, Jake stood on the bridge of the warship Noble's Pride as it fled toward the asteroid field. Duke Vextarn's fleet was following exactly as Jake had hoped. The alien Noble's ships were faster and more powerful, but they were being drawn away from their support bases. "Incoming transmission from the enemy fleet," reported the communications officer. "Put it through." Duke Vextarn's face appeared on the main screen. The alien noble looked pleased with himself. "Human, your cowardice proves that your species is unfit to command Zephyrian houses. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick." "I don't think so," Jake replied. "Besides, the fun is just getting started." He cut the transmission and turned to Commander Veltar. "Begin the attack." The asteroid field erupted into chaos. House Vethus ships that had been hiding behind the larger rocks opened fire from all directions. They had been waiting for hours in perfect silence while the enemy fleet flew into Jake's trap. Duke Vextarn's ships were caught completely off guard. Their formations broke apart as they tried to respond to attacks coming from every angle. The asteroids made it impossible for them to use their longer-range weapons effectively. "Focus fire on their command ship," Jake ordered. "If we take out Duke Vextarn, the others might surrender." The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, 12 enemy ships had been destroyed or captured. The rest were fleeing back toward their home worlds. Duke Vextarn's flagship was drifting powerless among the asteroids. Jake ordered the Duke brought aboard his ship. The alien noble was injured but alive. He looked at Jake with hatred and confusion. "You fight without honor," Duke Vextarn said. "I fight to protect my people," Jake replied. Your concept of honor would have gotten everyone killed for no reason. The Emperor will not allow this insult to stand. We'll see." The Emperor's response came 2 days later. Instead of punishment, he invited Jake to the capital for another audience. This time, Jake traveled with only Princess Zaelin and a small guard force. "You have surprised me again, Captain Miller," the Emperor said when they met in a smaller, more private chamber. "Your victory over Duke Vex Tarn has sent shock waves through the noble houses. I didn't want to fight, Your Majesty, but I couldn't let them kill my people." "Your people? Interesting that you call them that." The Emperor walked to a window that looked out over the capital city. "Tell me, what have you learned in your months as Master of House Vethys?" Jake thought carefully before answering. "I've learned that the oath bond system has strengths and weaknesses. The strength is absolute loyalty and trust. The weakness is that it prevents innovation and adaptation." "Explain." "House Vethys is incredibly efficient when given clear orders, but they have trouble making independent decisions or suggesting new approaches. They're so focused on obedience that they don't use their full potential." "And how have you addressed this weakness?" Princess Zaelin spoke up. "Captain Miller has implemented what he calls collaborative command. He asks for our opinions before making major decisions. He encourages us to suggest improvements to his plans. He treats us as advisors rather than servants." The Emperor turned back to them. "And this has been effective?" "House Vethys has increased productivity by 30%, Jake said. "Our mining operations are more efficient. Our diplomatic relations with other species have improved. Most importantly, the people seem happier. Happier servants work better," the Emperor mused. "A simple concept, yet one that eludes most oath holders." "Your Majesty, may I ask you something?" "Proceed." "Why did you really support me against Duke Vex Tarn?" "It would have been easier to let him win." The Emperor smiled, the first time Jake had seen such an expression on his ancient face. "Because, Captain Miller, you represent something my empire desperately needs." "What's that?" "Change, evolution, growth." The Emperor walked closer to them. "The Zephyrian Empire has remained unchanged for 10,000 years. We have the same laws, the same customs, the same ways of thinking our ancestors had. We are stable, but we are also stagnant." He gestured toward the window. "Other species develop new technologies, new philosophies, new approaches to old problems. We maintain our traditions and fall further behind. In another 1,000 years, we will be the galaxy's museum piece rather than its leaders." Jake was beginning to understand. "You want me to shake things up. I want you to prove that change is possible without destroying what makes us strong. Your success with House Vethys shows that evolution and tradition can coexist. What if I fail? Then we will learn from your failure and try a different approach. But if you succeed—" The Emperor paused. "If you succeed, you will have shown. Use a path to renewal." Over the following year, Jake's approach to managing House Vethys became a model that other houses began to copy. He established councils where bound servants could voice opinions without punishment. He created training programs that taught oath holders to think creatively within their bonds. Most importantly, he proved that respecting the dignity of servants made them more effective, not less. Some traditional houses opposed these changes, but they found themselves falling behind economically and politically. Young nobles began requesting placement with houses that used Jake's methods. The Emperor quietly supported these innovations while maintaining public neutrality. Princess Zaelin became Jake's closest advisor and friend. She helped him navigate Zephyrian culture while he helped her family adapt to new ways of thinking. Prince Kethfer eventually overcame his shame and became one of Jake's most effective military commanders. "Do you ever regret touching that knife?" Princess Zaylalen asked one evening as they reviewed reports from across the empire. Jake considered the question. He had never asked to become the master of an alien noble house. He had never wanted the responsibility for hundreds of lives. The weight of it still kept him awake some nights, but he had also seen what they had accomplished together. House Vethus was stronger than it had ever been. Their people were healthier and more productive. Other houses were adopting their methods and seeing similar improvements. No, he said finally. I don't regret it. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most important. Even though you can never return to Earth, that was the one sacrifice that still hurt. Earth was his home, but House Vethus needed him here. The oath bond required his presence, and breaking it would mean death for everyone who depended on him. I miss Earth, Jake admitted. But this is my responsibility now. These people trusted me with their lives. I won't abandon them. Princess Zalian smiled. The oath tells us you are worthy of our service, but your actions prove you are worthy of our respect. 3 years after the duel, Emperor Zarthis made an unprecedented announcement. He declared Jake Miller an official advisor to the imperial throne and granted him the title of Noble Innovator. It was a position that had never existed before, created specifically to recognize Jake's contributions to Zephyrian society. You have shown us that strength comes not from rigid tradition, but from the wisdom to adapt, the Emperor said during the ceremony. May your